Hello and welcome to this conversation on BloombergQuint. On Wednesday, the Reserve Bank of India reported its annual report, and the number that everyone was watching out for did finally get released. How much currency came back over the demonetization episode? Well, 99% of the currency that had been demonetized or had been scrapped as legal tender came back in. That raised fresh questions about the whole point of demonetization. Joining us to help us get perspective or share his perspective is Mr. P Chidambaram, former Finance Minister, who's kindly agreed to speak to us on the phone line. Mr. Chidambaram, thank you so much, sir, for taking a bit of time to speak with us. I guess, sir, the question that once again each of us are asking is, what was the point of this whole exercise? If it didn't manage to extinguish any of the quote-unquote black money out there, what was the whole point?
No point. There's no point at all. It was a completely misguided adventure, and as we had said from the very beginning, this will end up in an utter fiasco.
Mr. Chidambaram, you tweeted yesterday soon after this was released, and you spoke about the RBI's role in it quite rightfully. It is still unclear to us as to whose decision this was. The government says that the RBI recommended it. Perhaps they rubber-stamped a decision that the government has taken. Do we need to get into that blame game right now as to who was responsible, and should they in some way justify their decision?
See, the facts are on the table. It was, in fact, a government decision. They tried to disguise it by writing a letter on November 7, 2016. RBI hurriedly called a truncated meeting of the Board of Governors of RBI and took a decision without any research paper, without any background note, and recommended demonetization of 500 rupee notes and 1,000 rupee notes. It was a command performance, which is sad. And government promptly announced it at 8 o'clock. Is this the way a major decision that has a major impact on the economy should be taken? Therefore, I said the RBI's role was certainly not RBI did not cover itself with glory. For I said, shame on RBI for quote-unquote recommending demonetization. I know they did not recommend, but on record, it appears that they recommended, isn't it?
True, Mr. Chidambaram. Mr. Chidambaram, the other thing is, so this got announced as you just laid out the events from all intents. Looks like it was a hurried decision, or at least the implementation was probably not thought through enough. What do you think went wrong? The people out there just gamed the system, found ways to get this money. Could this have been avoided at any stage, or do you think that demonetization as it stands is something that will always fail because people will always find a way around it?
The idea was wrong. The design was wrong. They didn't think through what loopholes will be discovered by clever people. And in the first 30 days, according to what I gather, most people who had hoards of black money converted their black money into white. The people who actually suffered were the average people, the middle class and the lower middle class, who had a small number of demonetized notes and went through a tortuous process to convert them. Therefore, I think the design itself was wrong, and therefore people easily gained the system.
Mr. Chidambaram, yesterday, of course, the government came out trying to defend its position, and their point of view simply was that all of this money, which was in the informal system, has now come into the formal net. We are examining suspicious transactions or suspicious deposits, and we may still be able to impound some of this money via various taxes. Do you buy into that, sir?
I'll believe it when I see the results. The government has said that it has detected undisclosed income of about 16,000 odd crore. But that's par for the course. Every year the income tax department, through searches, surveys, seizures, detects alleged undisclosed income. But that has to go through a process of adjudication. There's an assessment, there is an appeal, there is a further appeal to the tribunal, there is a further appeal to the High Court. It's only when the matter is adjudicated, and that will take 7, 8, 10 years, will we know how much of the so-called undetected income has been detected as income and taxed. It's premature to claim that any amount has already been determined as tax. There are other ways to tackle black money, and government must come up with better ways. For example, voluntary disclosure of income scheme was a way to tackle black money. Third-party reporting. We amended the Income Tax Act to introduce third-party reporting. That was a way to tackle black money. I set up the FIU IND, which reported suspicious transactions of banks. That was a way to detect black money. The cash transaction tax, which I introduced and then removed after 3 years, was an interim measure until the FIU was set up to detect black money. The government should have designed other methods to detect black money. Demonetization was not the way to detect black money.
Absolutely, and I guess a lot of people, Mr. Chidambaram, argued that the stock of black money was not, at least a large part of it, was not in cash. So the other argument or the other justification being given is that this is increased financialization of assets. There has been some increase in flows into mutual funds, insurance, etc. But I'm not sure we know enough to know that that's something that A, was triggered by demonetization, B, will last. What do you make of that argument, sir?
Please understand that the generation of new black money cannot be stopped by one-time demonetization. You have to demonetize every month then. Black money is generated every day. And the sectors that are prone to generate and use black money are well known. Construction, a substantial part of the film world, capitation fees extracted by educational institutions, petty corruption which has to be funded, petty corruption at the level of the municipality, panchayat, revenue department, political funding. Are you suggesting that every rally held after demonetization, every rupee for every rally is paid by check? In the R.K. Nagar by-election in Tamil Nadu, which was countermanded by the Election Commission, what was the reason for countermanding? That unaccounted money was being distributed to voters. Therefore, one has to examine each sector which is prone to generate and use black money and devise methods to tackle that black money, both the stock and the flow. Demonetization is not an answer to all these ills. We know the ills. We have to devise sector-specific solutions.
Sure. Mr. Chidambaram, as we've been speaking, actually, we've got the April to July fiscal numbers. The only reason I bring them up is because, the government has exhausted 92% of its fiscal deficit for the current year, the projected numbers. And, you heard a government official this morning say that we are in talks with the RBI to transfer a higher dividend because the dividend had come in, at half of what it was last fiscal. Would you be worried about the government's finances this year, partly actually because of demonetization?
I'll have to wait to see the GDP numbers for the first quarter that is expected at about 5:30 today. My worry is that under UPA 1, India was on a growth path of 8 to 9%. Under UPA 2, and the first 2 years of BJP government, there was a slide down to a growth path of 7 to 8%. Now we may have further slid down to a growth path of 6 to 7%. The financial year 2016-17 ended poorly with the last quarter GVA only 5.6%. So let's see what the print for the first quarter of this year is. If it is between 6 to 7%, then clearly the graph has become lower. And it's going to take a lot of effort to ramp up growth rates first to 7 to 8% and then to 8 to 9%. I think demonetization has played a large part in pulling down growth rate.
Mr. Chidambaram, I have one last question, and this is, on the demonetization report that the Parliament Standing Committee on Finance has been looking into. We haven't got the full document from them. Do you think that report can throw a little bit more light on, A, whether costs and benefits were properly weighed or not, and, who was responsible for these decisions?
Well, I'm not a member of that committee, but I think that committee should examine this matter thoroughly. I think their deliberations are inconclusive. I think they will continue to examine this issue, and I would urge them to examine the issue thoroughly and put out a good report on how this decision was taken, why this decision was taken, and what are the cost benefits of this decision. I would urge them to do that.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chidambaram. Very kind of you to take our call and share your perspective on demonetisation. That's former Finance Minister P Chidambaram stating his case on demonetisation, saying essentially that firstly it was a bad idea. On top of that, it was hurriedly and badly implemented. And the result of that we have seen through one number which suggests that all the demonetised currency, or 99% of it to be precise, has come back in. Thanks for watching BloombergQuint. Do stay tuned and do log into BloombergQuint.com, where we have this interview and a lot more coverage on the demonetisation story. Thanks for watching.